over dollar thresholds, which vary a little bit, but make sure that the money's there, make sure that the paperwork is all done, make sure that there's a paper trail for transactions, that they're pre-audit of most transactions. This is an important piece of the fiscal control of the state. It is the fiscal control agency of the state. As part of the capital budget, there's a capital budget request, which is fairly firmly ensconced in the capital budget and very high on Dennis Goulet's ranking of IT projects and that, so that even if it fell off, it would be done, which is it's listed as moving to the cloud. We take the state's enterprise software system and move it to the cloud. It's much more complicated than that. It's a very significant upgrade. And as part of that, we would move to a cloud-based service instead of a land-based service, if you will. But it would be the most significant financial upgrade to the state in probably a dozen years. And we'll talk about that when we talk about FDM. But included here are 3 positions, one in the commissioner's office, one in the accounting services office, and one in FDM. But I've bundled them together because they are part of the financial systems upgrade. This will be enormously complicated, will affect every agency around the state. And the positions are all business systems analysts, or in the case of FDM, an information systems analyst. And it would be part of that massive undertaking.
Would you need these ongoing year after year, even after the upgrade?
So we would, because, for example, the FDM position would continue to do the regular upgrades. The state's financial systems got in trouble over decades when we stopped upgrading.
Yes.
And we, ended up having, and I know you know this, I'm not sure everybody's aware of the history where we had a financial system that was, put in place in 1983, and then we kind of didn't upgrade it very much. It'd be like if you were using WordPerfect instead of, and WordPerfect 3 with dual disk drive. And that was kind of where we were as a state. We need to upgrade continually on an ongoing basis, or else we end up having a system that's defunct and dead, and we end up spending 20, 30, $40 million to get a new system. That's part of what this is. The position in accounting services would, to be honest, once this project was done, which is a multi-year project, would move into the fixed asset module and would perform that function there, so that they would be on an ongoing basis, but slightly repurposed.
And
Representative Ober?
what happens if you don't get these?
Well, we're going to upgrade the system anyway. It just becomes enormously difficult. It becomes, I don't want to say it becomes a complete nightmare to do. People might know that when we did the original ERP, the system that's now in for 10, 12 years ago, we basically asked people to do, well, I'm going to point at Joe. Joe Bouchard did the upgrade from 9 to 5, and then came back to the office at about 4:30 and did his regular job of assistant commissioner.
Well,
and it damn near killed him.
one of your assistant commissioners, I'm not sure if it's Cassie or Joe, since they're together, would also like to say something on this topic. Cassie, is it you or Joe who wishes to speak?
It's me, please. I would just like to point out that the very last slide on the back of your slide deck has all the detail about the bundles and the specific positions and their funding.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thank you.
So I have the same
Thank you.
question here, Sarah. Does this include all those costs? And if not, what would those be? And you're going to have to, for every one of these, will you just say to yourself, I'll figure that out and get it over to them?
Yes.
Thank you. Charlie, please continue.
Thank you for that. So that's accounting services, broadly speaking. What I want to do is I'm going to ask Cassie if she would talk a little bit about the division of personnel. This is my attempt to make sure that our presentation is not completely boring and that I'm doing all of the talking, but she'll talk about the current pressure that division of personnel is under on slide 6.
Good morning.
Cassie.
Good morning. We have a central personnel office. It's called the Division of Personnel, and they support some central functions, including recruitment, hiring, and training. It also includes our employee relations office, and they negotiate with our employee unions, and now we're up to 11 unions. And we run a self-funded Bureau of Education and Training. And I think there's two significant things I would like to say about the Division of Personnel. One is that when Commissioner Arlinghouse joined us, he had direction from the governor that we needed to modernize our personnel system. And we concur with that 100%. And so we have been working very hard to develop central policies when appropriate, and to support flexibility and speed so that the agencies who are conducting the business of state government have their personnel needs met as quickly as possible. What's happened to the Division of Personnel over the last 2 years is, so they've undergone a lot of change. They've had turnover in staff, they've had retirements. And when the budget that we're currently in was passed, we had a very significant lapse requirement. And then what happened, I believe it's just a matter of timing. They had vacancies that came along because of retirements, people switching jobs. And they were very, very detrimental to them, not only doing their day-to-day business, but doing the personnel system reform that we believe is necessary. So when you look at this slide, we have bundle number 2, which includes 3 full-time positions and one part-time position. And these positions are critical to deliver HR services to our agencies with the speed that they need to recruit, to retain, to manage their employees, and to also do that reform work that we talked about. In this budget, by the way, we have completely converted the Bureau of Education and Training to a income-based model. So there are no general funds supporting the Bureau of Education. And that's a departure from the current budget. So I think that summarizes the Division of Personnel.
2 other things I want to point out, because people will remember this. First of all, transitioning BET to a tuition-based model instead of general fund supported, when it used to be roughly 50-50, is no small accomplishment. And I want to, and I say that having had nothing to do with it myself, that the people who work for us did a really good job on it. And it was hard and it was difficult, particularly in this climate that we're in. But it's a big thing, and it's a direction we had received from the governor's office. There are 2 other pieces people remember. In the last budget, we were required to do by House Bill 4, I guess, a personnel report on modernizing the system, reforming the system, because people know that the system itself is an enormous source of frustration to agencies. The thing I hear most from other commissioners about are personnel matters. And I don't mean discipline. I mean, can I reclass? How does this, is this possible? What is the rule for, and it's complicated. And the idea is to make it more modern and functional. We did a report on that which came out probably a year ago at this point. The second thing is, in that budget was a comp study. We did an initial small version for troopers because of a second special language in House Bill 4, I think, as well. But one of the things House Bill 4 called for was a study of the state's system of compensation and total compensation with comparators to private and public sector. That report was placed on hold during the early stages of the pandemic for quite some time. Because frankly, if we were in a climate where we were going to have to lose 10 to 15% of the state budget, it was an area that was probably going to not happen, because it was something we weren't doing today, we wouldn't have to do. When that seemed like it was not going to be the case, when some of the spending restraints were lifted, we did it not because we thought it was a good idea or a bad idea, but we did it because we're required to do it by House Bill 4. That will probably be released. I know I saw a draft early this week or late last week, I don't know, recently. And that will probably be released in short order. And I know that's something that this committee talked about 2 years ago as well. So I want you to know that that's out there.
So Charlie, I have two questions and one, the report. How did you guys account for in the report? Some of our positions are 37.5 hours a week as opposed to private industry, which is 40 hours a week. So when you're doing a salary comparison, how did you work that out?
Well, you can, obviously we hired a consultant who does a lot of comp studies and a lot of public sector comp studies on this. And it's, you just make an allowance for that it's, 37.5 is 37.5 divided by 40 of 40 hours.
Yeah.
And that's the easiest way to do that. There are intangibles in any sort of compensation system where you look at things and you say, are you putting a premium? What premium are you putting on, this perk or this benefit? All we can really do is look at, convert things to an hourly compensation rate, look at what benefits are, look at, for example, if you work for the state, you get on average, I don't remember the number anymore, 15 to 20 more days off.
Yeah.
Than you do if you work in the private sector. There are also comparators to state and local government or to local government. That's not necessarily something you can account for financially. So a lot of things you can attach a financial number to. Some things though are intangible, and so there's a qualitative as opposed to quantitative component to the report as well, I think.
All right, second question, bundle 2, all general fund positions. I know this is, you just talked about this as a mixture of income-based plus general fund. So
No, it's all general fund.
all general fund. Thank you. Please continue. Unless somebody has a question right now, I don't see any others. You're doing good.
Oh, I should look at the screen.
You're not being lectured. You're not being chastised, and you can answer all the questions. See?
I'm eager to be lectured and chastised when I need to be, though, just for the record. Okay, thank you. And I would point out that there are page numbers at the top of each slide. There are the page numbers in the budget that correspond to this if you want to look at specific accounting units.
That's
And
very
I say
helpful.
that
Thank you.
I say that because plant and property is about to come up,
Yeah.
which has more accounting units than a horse. We manage buildings. We manage 4 million square feet of office space. We manage something like 90 buildings, depending on what you count as a building. And then a bunch of leased space as well, particularly in the Bureau of Court Facilities. Courts are done sort of separately from everything else, but this particular division includes a great deal of transfers from other agencies. So we do the work. The money's in our budget, but it's also transferred from other agencies. I will tell you that I had a meeting with Matt Mayo, the governor's new budget director. One of those things about, what do you have any pieces of advice to give him, and what little advice I could give. I said, if you're going to build a budget, there are two things you have to do at the beginning of the budget process. If you're building a statewide budget, one is settle DOIT, because they affect every other agency's budget lines.
Yeah, we didn't get that done very well.
Well,
We're working on it.
there's some work. I haven't told, don't preview anything. I haven't told Joe yet.
Okay, we won't tell Joe.
And the other thing is plant and property, because the other thing that affects a lot of agency budgets is the plant and property number. There's a number in their budget. There's a number in our budget. It's double counting, but it's double counting because it's accounting for the cost to that agency and then the money being spent here by the people who do the work. That's why you see this as general funds and other funds in the chart on slide 7, shows a significant transfer from other agencies. Some of those transfers come as general funds. For example, the courts, entirely other funds in our budget, entirely general funds in their budget. So that's there.
So
We-
Charlie, on
yes.
this page, fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 are basically flat funded when compared with adjusted authorized for fiscal year 21. You have enough, you believe you have enough to do what you have to do to maintain with that flat funding?
Yeah, ish.
Now we ask the tough question.
It's so the way we manage property in the state of New Hampshire is an ongoing base. If you doubled the budget, we would spend the money. It's you walk around the buildings of the state, and there are some buildings that are A or B buildings, if you will. I met Karen Rantamaki is the director of plant and property now. When she was deputy and Steve Lorenzen was here, I sat down with them once and I said, before Steve leaves, because he can do this because he's leaving, do me a favor, go through our buildings and say, what's an A, what's a B, what's a C, and what's a D? We decided nothing was an F. And I think that was probably right. Just generally. And we had 2 buildings there, I think, that were A's, or maybe 3. And there are a lot of buildings that are B's and C's. And so what you do is you look around and you go, okay, we could fix that. And that's not critical. And that's like, well, the carpeting, how's the carpeting look? It's a little threadbare, but there are no tripping hazards. Okay. And so everything we do is it's actually not a bad analogy for the rest of what we do as an agency. You fix the tripping hazards first, and you don't worry as much about what's threadbare as long as it's functional. And so, we have a deferred maintenance list that I have one sitting on the corner of my desk. I don't have I have one that's about a year old, but it was basically maintenance staff walking around all the buildings with an iPad, like writing stuff down. And they wrote most of the things down. It's not 100% correct, because if you've got a deferred maintenance list that would cost about $100 million to fix, and you're going to fix about 2 million of it next year, you just got to get the big stuff on the list. And that's what we do. And I think most buildings, and the maintenance fund 2 years ago was a huge step in this direction, to fix the things that are most needy, as opposed to in the accounting units that have money. We have enough money to take care of the buildings in a big way. Presumably we can hire, in the current climate, workers at a number of levels. But we have enough money to do a decent job, not a great job. And it's the state of New Hampshire. You have, I don't need to tell you this, but you have 8 million priorities that are coming to you, and you're not going to be able to fund half of them. Yeah. And that's the way it is. So this is a decent number. I think plant and property was is reasonably adequately staffed at this number.
Okay, that's good to know.
So on the other hand, if you got some money you're not sure what to do with,
yeah,
I can fix some stuff.
We need to cut 79 million. Don't.
Okay. I would not cut 79 million out of here. That's all I'm saying. If you want to turn to page 2 or the second plant and property slide, which is slide 8 in your deck, if you will. I talk about a couple of House Bill 2 provisions here that are probably going to require at least a little bit of discussion. The steam heating account is just updating those numbers. People will remember that when Concord Steam closed and we did a massive project to convert a bunch of buildings. I think it was 40 separate projects or something like that. It's just finishing up, but one of the requirements of that is the $7 million and $20 million was taken out of operating costs in a bill in, I'm going to say roughly March of 2017. And about $7 million was bonded. And the requirement was that the savings are used to pay for so we budget the steam portion of class 23 Sarah will correct me when I say something stupid. That's why she's here. I'm hoping that I don't say as many stupid things. Okay. We budget the steam portion of class 23 at the number it would have been. And the money that we're spending, which is less than that, we use to pay off the debt service. It's transferred to what's called the state heating system steam account, which is
so we're talking about, for people who are looking at their HB2 at home, we're talking about section 2, which starts at the bottom of page 1 and continues onto page 2. And you basically are asking us in this section to extend
the timeline.
Shall be non-lapsing appropriated to the Department of Admin Services for the biennium ending June 30th, 2021 and the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022.
The money is then set in an account and it's available for the treasurer to use at the time they deem necessary.
Okay.
Based on when they issue bonds to pay off the bonds.
Representative Burge.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a question on this page. You mentioned sheriff custody. What is that?
Oh, that's the next thing I was going to talk
That's
about.
the next thing. And so if you look in HB2 again, you're now looking at section 1, which is on top of the STEAM section. So you're on the same page. If you open your HB2, you got yours and you can see. So Charlie, go ahead.
So sheriff custody reimbursements, and I'm not going to say as much on this because I think Representative Ober knows a lot more about it than I do, but we pay for sheriff custody of prisoners. We reimburse. There's no reason this is in our budget, except that it has to be somewhere. And we don't have any control over it, and we don't manage it per se because we don't do the custody, but there are costs. We budget a number every year. The legislature, the state budgets a number every year, and it's never quite as much as the costs. And so what we did with this line, we budgeted a number that's, our budget went down 15%. So this number went down 15%. That's it. No real thought process in that, except just lowering it. And then we were talking about it, and I said, we should have some sort of a, this shouldn't be first come, first served, right? That we just have a run to the finish line, and you get your request in first, you get the money, and then suddenly we're out and nobody gets any more. So I came up with a formula based on simplicity. It did not any more complicated than that, and said, all right, every county gets reimbursements. Let's decide that, if you're 3% of the population of the state, you get 3% of whatever money ends up being appropriated. And, the same process, you got to go through, you got to get reimbursed, you got to do the work, but that's the cap. When you hit that number, you're done. And that's just, and I picked population because it's an available statistic. I'm not wedded to it.
Yes, you have more questions?
Yeah, follow up. That seems to work in theory, but I live in Coas County, the largest county in the state. It doesn't work for Coas County. We're always short.
I think so. Right now, everybody's always short, right? That's because the amount appropriated is not as much as is spent. And the question is, how do I phrase this? How do we short people equitably? Maybe population isn't the right phrase, but if we're going to short everybody, what's the best mechanism for prorating? Road mileage might be a thing. I don't know.
I don't think counties track that.
It is, although to be honest, I'm not exactly sure how you would, like what road mileage, from where to where. I'm not, by the way, I'm not.
Oh, no, we can debate this, but road mileage, if the number of road that you have in your county, we have, Coas County is not noted for its, super highways.
No, that's right. We talked about that.
Okay, we
Yeah.
have class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So more 5 and 6 than other counties do.
So I'm okay, personally, with anything you come up. No, that makes sense based on I think it's something where I would turn to the legislature, because you are the county delegations, to come up with what you think, and you have a much better idea how it works, which metrics, if you will, approximate your operating costs. And we put in population as a placeholder. So I have no,
and
what's the right phrase? I have no dog in this fight.
I know in Coas County, the largest county, has roughly 31,000 people.
Oh, I see. And so you're saying your costs, because of the distance they have to travel, is higher, but your population is smaller. That's a fair point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But I'd support whatever you think is fair.
You'll have to come up with a suggestion. That's what he's saying. He's giving it the best shot. Legislature needs to work on it. I got that loud and clear.
Okay, Are you open for suggestions?
And those are lines.
Anything.
Well, at this,
All I'm saying is that if we're gonna appropriate a number that's going to be less than is spent, we should have some mechanism for deciding how much everybody gets. So-
Representative Burrs, those are actually lines 22 through 28 on page 1. And it's no longer in his hands, it's in our hands. We would have to, if we're going to amend that, and Commissioner Arlinghouse has done the best he can, but now he's out of the, so he's explaining, he's telling you, he's hearing what you're saying, but it's us.
No, that's fine. Okay, that's plant and property. Any other plant and property? I should look at the computer in front of me. Okay,
Representative Leishman,
Morning, Charlie.
hi.
You had a fairly aggressive program over at the Gallon Park last couple of years as far as rehabbing buildings. Are you still rehabbing any buildings or everything kind of done over there?
I think everything isn't done, so people will know that if you think of the Gallon Office Park, or the SOPS campus, we call it sometimes, there is a 2005-ish master plan for the site, which is sort of being followed. There's sort of a continual effort to fix bits of the inside of buildings and to rehab some major buildings. I think right now the biggest projects on the capital budget list are preserving, not Philbrook, the Victorian building next to the main building. I can't remember its name. I do this all the time. I always want to say Philbrook and it's not. But we're preserving that building, that giant Victorian building right there, from the weather. There are some internal things happening in main building, but they tend to be more, I don't want to say cosmetic. They tend to be more, sort of safety and stabilizing this area and that area. We're tearing down some things, the old Concord steam plant, which is behind Main, sort of toward the garage and warehouse and the laundry facility. That's being torn down. Well, the whole thing's being torn down, although I think the stack is still half up. And then an area in there, there's a handicap accessibility being built and handicap accessibility, and I think a stairway in the various, so main building, the big building on top of the hill, has all kinds of wings and tentacles to it. Some of them are,
oh, is that Walker?
Walker is the big one on the corner, sort of back by the high school. It's sort of at the corner of
You're
State and
right,
Fruit.
not on top of
That's,
the hill.
Walker's actually one of the nicest buildings in the state, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
But you come forward from that and Main is, if you go in the regular entrance,
It's a big scary building.
yeah, the big scary building, right? It's where,
Okay.
it's not the only building with ghosts, but supposedly that's where the ghosts are.
Yeah.
And there's some really bad spots in the basement. Like if you take the
And in
tour,
basement, the old cells and.
yeah, you don't want to know what happened there. I asked somebody once and they're like, oh, don't ask questions you don't want to hear the answer to. So there are parts of that probably will never be fixed, like the Kent wing and the Peasley wing might have some structural issues with it, but it might not. But we do a little bit at a time. But in terms of major giant rehab, Bancroft is the building I was trying to think of. Bancroft is probably the only remaining building that's going to undergo a significant expansion that will then create additional state office space.
Which will allow you not to have to lease space or.
The theory is when they developed the program, starting 20 years ago, the idea was to gradually move as many people into state spaces instead of lease space as possible. And a lot of that was accomplished. It won't be entirely, because if you think of DNCR, they're leasing space on the heights on Chanel Drive, I think. And they're probably never going to come into state space. They're just, unless we built a building, because there's not, we got little bits here and little bits there. We don't have much extra. I mean, use this as an example. We had a discussion internally about moving somebody who's in one area. Well, they should be closer to these people. And they're like, and I'm like, yeah, let's move them. Where exactly? And we couldn't come up with well, if these people move and then those people move.
Oh, boy.
And then what if agriculture, we just kicked out of the building entirely? Great. Okay. Where would they go? Oh, Nowhere. Okay, so that doesn't work. And so you end up starting over. But so the campus, there are things happening, but right now, a lot of it is operational stuff. Oxygen systems in the laundry building, for example, is something on our list right now.
All right, thanks, Madam Chair.
What's happened with the old steam building?
So the old steam building we did significant hazardous waste remediation, which was really a little bit scary because not everybody operates the same way. Generally speaking, you shouldn't have a giant plastic gallon jug of mercury just hanging out under the stairs unmarked,
Oh, my God.
as an example. But we took care of that. So we took care of everything so that now it's being torn down. But to tear it down, you need to clean it out first so that that doesn't all become hazardous waste.
Right.
And it is about, I would say, the demolition project, which is a capital budget item in the 2021 capital budget, is about half done.
Okay.
Half the stack came down because it started doing a Pisa kind of thing,
Oh, dear.
which you don't want. And so we hired the Boston Chimney Company, which is like a really cool name, I think, for a company. Boston Chimney and Tower, I think they're called. I thought, I want to work for a company with a name like that. It just seems very solid. So, I'm sorry, I digress. Well, thank you. I'll ask you to repeat that to my wife. Division of Procurement and Support Services. We buy stuff. It's a little more complicated than that. And I think Gary's probably listening, and he would dispute that that's what they do, is they buy stuff. But generally speaking, we bid a lot of things, and there are other services. Fleet management is done out of this agency. It also includes surplus property, where the state, unlike the federal government, actually sells its surplus property rather than giving it away, and we make a buck off it. White Farm is where most of that happens. We have a surplus food distribution network that goes out of this. Graphic Services, the state central graphic services function, is out of here. We manage the fleet. We manage merchant cards, which is when people pay us. We manage procurement cards, which is when we pay people. This agency is, well, I'm very proud of them, I should say. During the pandemic, there's probably, our agency has been hit pretty hard by the pandemic, not because people got it, but because we work on stuff and everybody gets repurposed. We set up a warehouse, and Gary Lunetta is the director. Gary's got a couple of people who are basically 100% repurposed to manage the warehouse. We don't manage warehouses. That's not something we do. We don't do inventory control exactly, but somebody had to, so we did it. And two very good people, Chris and Don actually are their names. They're doing that. We did an analysis, and about a little over 40% of their time has been spent repurposed to COVIDian sort of activities. So they've been hit pretty hard on that, but they're managing to do everything anyway. So these are great people, making sure that when we buy stuff, we buy it at a good price, and that we have a legal contract, so that if they don't deliver, we don't pay. And that's true of road salt, and it's true of N95 masks. And from the beginning, they stepped up and said, we're not just going to call some guy in China and go, send us what you got, we'll send you a check, and we don't worry about whether we get it or not. We make sure that the flow and everything is there. They do a great job. They're down a lot of people because this is, Cassie talked a little bit before about the tyranny of retirements, where somebody retires, that's open, and the open position is the easiest to eliminate. So there's a bundle here, 3 full-time and 1 part-time. It helps purchasing. Everybody, this is a trend, a theme I think you'll run into in our agency. Everybody needs to be cross-trained. Sarah and I have a monthly meeting about finance. And one of the big things that comes up in that meeting is, how many people know how to do payroll? It can't just be one. It's got to be everybody. How many people know how to do AR? How many people need to know how to do AP? How many people know how to pick something? And that's what's happening. In Gary's agency, it used to be that I only do commodity buying. Nope, everybody buys everything. Even if you specialize in something, everybody buys everything. We can cover each other. And that's been great right now, because, for example, we had the fleet manager position open for about a year because of the hiring freeze and all of that. And the guy who did P cards also did fleet. It's not his job, but he did it because somebody had to, and they step up. There's a point though at which you can't keep doing that anymore. That's why we have a bundle of positions here.
Charlie, before we go on, you've got a line here, graphic services established as a revolving fund in page 110 to 112 and HB1. We also have sections in HB2 related to that. Could you go through that, and then Representative Burge is going to have a question.
Sure. Graphic services is 3 accounting units in your budget on page
Okay, so I'm
110
on
to
page
112.
110.
There's graphic services administration. And then there's, let me get it in front of me, photocopy and print shop operations.
Yep.
And that's sort of a holdover from a day when those were different things. We live in a world where they aren't exactly different things anymore, right? The line between,
Why don't we
Copying.
reorganize this so it matches today? Oh,
um,
Sarah just fainted because that's something she has to do. Never mind.
we could actually look at doing that. It might make sense. So 2 of these, the administration is the general funds. Then the 2 operation pieces are dedicated funds. They are, people pay for their copies, people pay for their printing, and they're meant to cover themselves. And they do essentially every year. There's a little bit left over at the end of every year. We're not meant to spend more than is left over. And it varies usually from between 13,000 and I think at the low of the last 5 years, and something like 60,000 is the high in that range.
Where
What,
does that money go?
well, right now it lapses to the
So
general
it
fund.
Goes to, like, this year.
It would go to the general
red,
fund.
It would pay off.
Well, it wouldn't pay
something.
off anything. It would go to you, not you. It would come back to the
It could
fund
go
as a
back.
lapse.
Yeah.
So
And
what
you're proposing,
I'm proposing to not do that anymore, and here's why. And we could cap it if we wanted to, but there's not enough money that makes it, I think, necessarily worth capping. The salary adjustment fund. We have a salary adjustment fund in the state. When people retire, so we budget people's salaries, people's benefits in the state. When they retire, typically they get a large payout. If you've been here 5 or 6 years, it's not that large. If you've been here 30 or 40, it's quite large. Agencies have the ability for generally funded positions to go to the salary adjustment fund to cover that. It's meant to cover that. It's meant to be the excess. It's swept out and then used to pay that more than anything else. You can't do that with dedicated funds. So, normally this doesn't come up much because it's not a lot of money. There aren't that many people in dedicated funds. Happens to be, so I noticed this because graphic services is apparently one of the greatest places to work in state government. I got people there. This is a story. When I started as commissioner, I did a tour of buildings and everybody where we had people working. I wanted to try to meet essentially everybody who worked for the department. I got most everybody and some of the prisoners. And I go over to graphic services. I'm talking to people. I'm on the print shop floor. And I'm talking to a guy, Brian is his name. He's actually retired since, but Brian Cummings. And I'm like, oh, how long you been here? And he said, 41 years. I'm like, holy cow, 41 years. He goes, yeah, and I'm not even the senior guy on the floor. And he points across the room to Dave Roy is the guy's name, who's been there 46. He's pushing 50 years now. And by the way, 46, 47 years, same room, same print shop, same place. I mean, God bless him. Does great work and he's wonderful. By the way, when he retires, it's a big number. Well, if it's a general fund, you go to the salary adjustment fund. We're not setting aside money for that. And we can't set aside money for that because it's not that. So in our agency, surplus property is a revolving fund. Surplus food is a revolving fund, largely because of the federal component.
and so that's why on page 2, it says establish in state treasury a graphic services fund which shall be revolving fund administrated by the Department of Administrative Services, the fund shall be non-lapsing. And it goes on to talk about in the next section, necessary costs of administration, management, operations, activities, et cetera. So that's what you're talking about doing with this money.
That's
is
it.
For
Yep.
these people.
Yep.
Okay, anybody got a question on that? Representative Burris, you had your hand up and I think you were just slightly farther down on that. So I'll go to you, we're on the same page.
I was reading ahead. Thank you. My question goes back to purchasing. When you purchase an item, you put it out for bid. In taking that into consideration, do you always go for the bottom line, or do you take quality into account? Because in the long run, if the quality isn't there, it'll cost you more.
It's it's a really good point. And there are perils of low bid bidding. It depends on the product. And I'm going to use a couple of examples. So if you think about something like a commodity, like road salt. Road salt is a great example. We actually did a reverse auction, which is a little bit like Name That Tune. If you're old enough to remember Name That Tune, I can pay 23 cents for that salt. Oh yeah, I can do it for 22. And we did that. You save a little money that way because road salt is road salt. That's not technically true. I understand, but as long as you say we need this, and there's a technical component that I'll get lost on, but it has to be, this percentage of that or whatever. But as long as you meet that threshold. Well, if you meet a threshold, so what we'll do with things like office supplies, let's say, is we'll write a standard for what we want. Not any paper towel you come up with, but the paper towel's got to meet this standard and this standard and this standard. Then you bid on it so that we're bidding apples. And we're bidding both sides of the equation. Nobody's trying to foist off on you Macintoshes or something. And so the bid spec will have a great deal of detail. And it depends a little bit on the product or the process that's being bid. Services are bid too, and what service are you bidding? So quality can be taken into consideration. Like when we do a construction project, these are multi-million-dollar bids. The specs are just, page after page after page that you and I, or at least I anyway, just don't understand. And we have engineers who walk through it and consultants that go through it, and you have to meet those standards. And on a more complicated thing like a construction project, well, we'll talk about this later, but we actually then follow up to make sure you're not giving us, you're not giving us plywood instead of 2x4s or whatever.
Thank you.
It's a good point, Madam Chair, because the buying things is a lot harder than people think, and it's a lot more complicated than people think. And for those reasons, because otherwise if you're not good at it, you can get had pretty easy. Okay.
So Charlie, you've also got section 3 related to the division of procurement and support services and HP2, which is on page 2, section 3.
So this is P cards. The P card or procurement card was established 5, 6, 7 years ago as a test. We buy things with a credit card.
Yeah.
It used to be we bought a lot of stuff with field purchase orders, which have very little accountability. And as a test, we started buying things with the credit card. We get rebate revenue on it, and negotiated value. The more you spend, the higher your rebate, the more basis points you get back, so to speak.
Linda Hodgson was commissioner. That's a bill I had co-sponsored. when
Oh,
we
was that
went
right?
in. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you've heard of this before then.
Oh, yeah. But it doesn't look to me like section 3 makes a big change. You've just made,
It's a little change, but I want you to know what you're doing before I
That's-
pretend it's too little.
yeah.
Currently, so P cards are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're at the point where it's not a side issue where you and the whole P card program was off budget, so it wasn't in the budget in the last 2 or 3 budgets. It's just off budget. But we're not at the point where occasionally we buy something with a credit card, but pretty much we just write checks. The spend on that side of the house gets larger and larger, and we need to be in a position where the controls on purchasing are Purchasing is purchasing.
Yeah.
How you pay for it shouldn't matter. And so the P card is, I don't want to be a standalone set aside. I want it integrated into the rest of the program. So there's a bureau in procurement, Bureau of Purchase and Property, where we meld it in. And the rebates are not set aside into an off budget account that stands by itself. They're merely part of, they pay for purchasing, and the P card manager and the P card assistant manager are not separate standalone off budget people. They're just in the budget like everything else. This is a change that actually does financially help us and replaces general fund dollars with rebate revenue to a small extent. I don't want to overstate it, but it's on a net value, it's maybe 60 grand. That sound right?
Between, it varies year to year, but I would say probably on average about 60.
So for those of you who can't hear, that was Sarah, and she said it varies from year to year. On average, it's about 60. So it's a slight net benefit to the general fund, but slight.
Well, just so you know, the intent was to start it as a pilot, and if successful, to move it and do exactly what you're doing.
Oh, good. Oh, look at that. That's great.
Linda Hodgkin did not think it was going to work, so she was amenable to a pilot fund.
Well, I would say, I think the pilot would turned out to be a good idea because I think we took a few years getting a handle on it and instituting controls around it. You know, one of the things you want to make sure is that you don't have people, I don't know what the right term is, thinking they're just running around with a credit card, but we have a very strong control environment around it. And, you know, rules and waivers and, you know, what you can use it for and what you can't. So I think it's actually worked out to be a great success. Okay, that's procurement.
Yep. We're ready to move. I
Public
guess.
Works. The Division of Public Works, we build stuff. We manage $160 million worth of projects. There are about 120 active projects in some stage of development. That's a rough number. I don't have an exact because what stage of development is a question. Public Works are in the RSA's 21I sections like 79, 80 and in that area have some discussion of this. As an aside, Public Works grows out of the and the regulations on it grow out of the time when the only one of my predecessors to go to jail, at least that I'm aware of, went to jail in the 40s for bid rigging, essentially. Goofy construction contracts that were not very good. He ended up doing federal time, I think. We don't do that anymore. I'm not at risk for going to jail. At least I don't think I am. But there are a lot of, so there's state standards on buildings. We have to follow state standards on buildings. When we build stuff, we don't build whatever's cheapest. We come up with plans and designs so that you're not leaning on a wall and it falls down. And that, you know, we don't have a lot of styrofoam walls in state buildings. We build to I think it's a 35-year standard. I might get that wrong, but that's about right. General fund projects are generally funded, and that work is done sort of straight up on this. Capital projects and non-general fund projects are by state law required to be billed back to the agencies, or billed back to the project is probably the right way to put that. So that this unit has agency income to a significant extent. It's about a third. It goes up and down a little bit each year, depending on which projects are approved and where they are, so to speak, in the where the money's coming from for them.
So bundle 5, are they all general fund or are they that mixture?
They're all that mix. So every position in this agency is budgeted at 63/37. That's just in the position count, whatever that thing is called, in the position module. That's how they're listed in the budget. We're going to look at over time how we budget positions. I believe that clerk of the works. So there are 3 kinds of positions in public works, right? There's the project managers, the engineer and the architect, the guy who writes the plans, the guy who is working on developing the plans that we build from, and then works on that project and works with the construction company on that. They're project managers is what we call them. That's 4 of the positions. We're down a bunch. Our only electrical engineer, for example, retired. We're down a mechanical. I think we're down an electric, a mechanical, and an architect. And I don't know what the 4th is. I think it's a more entry level position. But there's a lot of fungibility there. We try to assign a project to the people. The guy who works on boilers is the guy who always works on boilers. I think it's typically Dave Goulet, for example, because he knows boilers. And we don't have Caitlin work on boilers because she's an architect as opposed to, and so she works on, so everybody has like a, who should this project go to? Well, we'll probably put that one in with Keith, that kind of thing. That's one piece. There's a small sort of business management staff, which are the people who make the paperwork go and get all the things from the contractors. And then there's a significant construction oversight. When you hear people talk about clerk of the works, the clerk of the works is the person on the construction project who does, who makes sure that that stuff is working, they used to talk about slump tests, but concrete breaks. We pour concrete and then they test them periodically. I'm doing this because I had to learn about concrete breaks, and I desperately want to use that information at some point, and so this is my shot. But they actually, when they pour the concrete, they do these 14-day, 28-day, and I think it's 56-day samples, which they then break to see if we got the right concrete. And if it doesn't break right at the 14-day break, we make them take it out and put it in again. That sort of follow-up on the project is critical. And people remember, I think starting in 2013, probably, there was additional language put in the capital project for us to make sure that on capital projects that we are hiring clerks and that they can be paid for out of the capital funds. And that's the billing.
I have a quick.
We've gotten by with this
Representative
level of
Leishman.
staffing, just real quick, we've gotten by with this level of staffing for the last year and a half because people will know there was a capital budget freeze. Most capital projects were either not being done, not being started, or slowed, so that the workload for the first 9 to 10 months of the state of emergency was less. I don't want to say nobody was working because that's not remotely true, but we weren't pushing as many projects forward because I think there was some concern about, there's a lot of financial uncertainty for the first 6 or 8 months of the pandemic. People weren't sure if there was going to be a huge revenue collapse or not, and so projects were slow. We only need the people if we're going to build stuff, but I think we are going to build stuff. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I thought this might be a good place to weigh in on the steam building that was built, and I think whoever was you're smiling, so you must have something to do with the architecture. That I think it looks nice. It was
What people I don't actually know where we are, but I think it's the building right over there. No, actually over there by the police station and sort of behind the Department of Justice. We built a steam house, and instead of it being an ugly monstrosity made out of green cinder blocks or something, it's a brick building. And by the way, it doesn't take much money to make sure the building fits into its surroundings and doesn't look like a blight on the fabric of the city of Concord. And we've gotten a lot of comments on that. The architect is actually from Vermont, and just a real good guy. And they made a huge effort, and it was the only thing I had to do with it. But I'm going to say this is I insisted on reviewing the brick color, and which is really stupid. But I like bricks, and I wanted to make sure we weren't buying pink ones, that we bought dark red, and so. Okay, that's Public Works. And knowing that you're tired of hearing me at this point, keep talking. I'm going to ask Cassie to talk again too. See how I intro you, Cassie? It's real nice. But we're going to talk about financial data management, the most inappropriately named division of our agency, because although that's what they do, it's so much more. Oh, that's your line, isn't it? Did I steal that? So Cassie
Yeah.
Keene's going to talk about FDM.
That's all time.
Hello again. The most important role of FDM is that they administer New Hampshire First, which is our business enterprise system that is the backbone of state government, and it manages every process you can think of. It manages HR. If we hire somebody, we put them into the system. If they have a promotion, if they terminate, and it manages every phase of the HR process. It manages our payroll and produces our payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and also financial reporting. And so it's a very large undertaking. And as Charlie mentioned earlier, there is a capital budget proposal for us to move New Hampshire First from an on-premise system to the cloud, which we believe will allow us to update the system more regularly, not get behind like we have in the past. And it's going to give our agencies a lot of ease and flexibility to customize financial reporting for their own needs, which I think is going to help agencies. It's going to help the legislature. It's going to help the chief executive. So we're very enthused about moving to the cloud. There are 4 different increases in the FDM budget. And one of those increases is for our department-wide funding of the DOIT budget, and that is approximately $221,000. There is increased staff overtime for to allow staff to work overtime to work on the cloud development. There is an extra $200,000 that is to support a DAS department-wide PC replacement. We found ourselves shortchanged when the pandemic hit. First of all, DOIT has a standard where they recommend that a PC be replaced every 4 years. We have nearly 250 computers that exceed that age. And when the pandemic hit, we had mostly desktops. We had some laptops. And so we had old equipment and we didn't have equipment that was really flexible. So the pandemic taught us something. So as we move forward, we want to get on a schedule where we regularly budget in our budget, and there's no highs and there's no lows. Replacement PCs for our staff, and we're going to move to a model where we use laptops and docking stations so that if a staff person is working remotely, they simply bring their laptop home with them. And if they come back into the office, they bring their laptop in and they plug it in at their desk. And there is also an increase in the FDM budget for our vendor, who is called Infor. They actually run our New Hampshire First system, and there is an annual maintenance increase in the budget. And that's directly related to our scheduling project, which as Representative Ober knows, we're right now in phase 1, and we're going to be launching this month a scheduling initiative to support the Department of Corrections. And it's a mechanism. It's actually a couple different things. It provides efficiency in scheduling of staff, and also it allows staff to punch in and punch out very expeditiously using like a key card kind of system. And it's going to give the Department of Corrections a lot more control about who's working where and when. And next phases of another project that's underway called strategic sourcing. And we are short 3 positions in the current proposed budget to support FDM, and it's bundle 3, and we mentioned it earlier when we talked about the Bureau of Accounts. The interesting thing about New Hampshire First is it is administered by FDM, but it is literally a system that requires contributions from all over our department. So when I said there's a module that helps support HR, our division of personnel is heavily involved in how is the New Hampshire First meeting personnel needs. Financial reporting, obviously Bureau of Accounts is involved. Payroll, Bureau of Accounts. So there are 3 positions in bundle 3, and those 3 positions would support the initiative to move to the cloud.
Cassie, does FDM have any sections in HB2? It didn't seem to me that any of those sections directly related to FDM. Did I read those correctly?
You did. There is nothing in House Bill 2 related to FDM.
Thank you.
Oh,
Seeing no questions, I bet you're gonna get to recontinue with risk and benefits when we turn the page somehow.
maybe.
Maybe.
The only thing I want to say, Sarah did point out that there's a section about the continuation of the funding for scheduling software in HP.
Oh, okay, got that.
Oh, what section is that, Charlie? Page 7 of
Page
HB 2.
7.
Thank you. Representative Leishman.
It is 7, page 7, line 24.
Section
in the-
13.
Line 24.
So in
okay.
the last budget, the last budget included as one of the operating things instead of a capital thing. If you remember 2 years ago, there's a whole bunch of money in House Bill 2 that was the equivalent of sort of capital money, but it was being spent in House Bill 2.
Right.
There was an amount of money for the scheduling process, and we're not 100% sure if that's going to be spent by June 30th or not, but we're using it for the project. It might actually be close.
So you would like to have it extended?
We would like to have it
just-
extended
okay.
in the
Yes, I
equivalent
do
of a capital
remember that.
budget
Thank you.
extension. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah, for saving us.
Good catch, Sarah.
Madam Chair, would it be okay if I asked Cassie to do the division of risk and benefits as
Yeah, I
well?
was sure you were going to, actually.
Hello again. So the next couple of slides relate to division of risk and benefits. And the first slide, which is number 12, really just talks about what is this division of risk and benefits. And this committee, Representative Ober, are very, very familiar with our division of risk and benefits, which is led by Director Joyce Pittman, who has done a wonderful, wonderful job. Sarah and I used to be a part of risk and benefits, so it's near and dear to our hearts. In any event, we administer the employee and the retiree health benefit plans, and we cover approximately 37,000 people, which is our employees and their families and our retirees and spouses, generally speaking. We also, in the division of, we spend, by the way, about $600 million in a biennium for healthcare. So the work that we do to contain costs is one of our major goals. It's I think, good for you folks to know that employee benefits are defined by the collective bargaining agreements, and the legislature defines the scope of the retiree health benefits. So we don't have the ability to simply change benefits on our own. Again, we have to look to collective bargaining and to the legislature in the case of retiree health. We also secure property and casualty insurance for state agencies, and that's the bullet that we'll focus on when we look at what's different about this budget. We administer the workers' compensation program for the state of New Hampshire. In this budget, you're going to see some differences, and it's an increase in total funds in class 211. And what we did is budget in, I think it's a lot like the buildings. We budgeted in class 211 in risk more than 15 insurance policies. And those policies are funded by agencies, and there's agency income to support that expense. And this is a change in the budgeting of the policies, how they're budgeted, not the amount. And the reason we did this is that over the years, we've come to realize in risk that we've been put in a position with our scarce resources of having to be a collection agency to collect money from agencies and to make sure that they're paying policies to the carriers who are insuring the state of New Hampshire's interests. And it's a terribly inefficient policy way to run a business. And so by moving the expense into the risk budget, where we in risk will be able to pay those carriers when due. And we can efficiently work with the agencies to collect the revenue from them that supports that expense. So that's why you see a difference in class 211. And Representative Ober in particular, we know we've talked about cyber insurance. This is a general fund expense that's been in the Division of Risk and Benefits since approximately 2015. It does cover cybersecurity coverage for the entire state of New Hampshire, all 3 branches, the Secretary of State, and the other constitutional entities. And as I said, it is a general fund expense in this budget.
We did look at so people will know that Representative Ober during the what are they called, the governor's budget hearings in November, I think, said something to us about, hey, why is that budgeted there as general funds instead of cost allocated like all the other IT expenses through DOIT?
Class 27. is
Class
where you can
27.
See that,
So we looked at it because
but it was already done.
so the budget already done. So at the beginning of the governor's phase, we sort of talked about it, but because it was already there, I think where the governor's office was they said, if that can be done in the legislative phase, we're not opposed to it, but we're not doing it yet.
Right,
we
because that would
talked to-
change every class 27 in every agency.
So we talked to Dennis about it.
We'll do it. No, don't, Joe doesn't know that.
So we, if something comes up where we're changing the class 27 in every state agency budget anyway, then we might consider doing that at that appropriate
And then
time.
this amount, just understand what Cassie said, which I think was very clear because she gives clear descriptions, would actually move into class 211.
Yes.
See, Cassie gives clear descriptions. I got it. Okay,
There you go.
there we go.
Okay.
So now retiree health, where we see miraculously
Page
fewer
13.
dollars.
Lots and lots of money.
The first
Yeah.
time Cassie, I have to tell you, the first time the commissioner said at the governor's budget hearings in November that this had gone down, my heart sank because I said to myself, how many retirees died because of COVID? Because I couldn't imagine how else it had gone down.
No, we have a wild success story to tell, and I want to applaud and get on my knees and thank the work of the Division of Risk and Benefits, because I think it's wonderful news, not only for our department, but for the state and for you folks who are struggling in this very hard fiscal time. So we in how can we attribute this success? And we can attribute it to the transfer of the medical benefits for Medicare retirees, not prescription drug, by the way, from a self-funded model to a Medicare Advantage model. We actually did this beginning in calendar year 2019, and we were under contract with Anthem for our Medicare retirees, and we converted them from a self-funded model to Medicare Advantage. And what it did was it brought in federal funds that were paid directly to the carrier, who's incentivized to coordinate care on behalf of retirees. And that resulted in substantial savings to the plan in the current biennium. And so the first bullet you see on this page, you can see that we estimate a lapse in general funds in the amount of 77 million in fiscal year 21. And we believe that that lapse will go up to 10 million for the entire biennium. Then in 2020, we that contract with Anthem was ending at 12/31/2020. So we did a procurement for a Medicare Advantage carrier for our Medicare retirees. And we knew what has happened since we've been talking about retiree health a lot with this committee, with finance committees in both the House and Senate, is that the market in New Hampshire has evolved. And when we were first confronted with shortfalls in retiree health and looking at various cost containment strategies, we didn't have Medicare Advantage in our toolbox. And by the time we got to 2018, the market was maturing here in New Hampshire, and that's why we could move our members to a Medicare Advantage product in 2019. Then when we went out to bid, we knew that there were other carriers in the market apart from Anthem. And when we went out to bid, we expected there to be a lot of competition, and there was, and we achieved really, really amazing rates. And the savings that you see for governor's recommended, a $17.6 million reduction off of fiscal year 21, and then in 23, an additional 11.8. That's attributed to that procurement. And I really can't emphasize enough the very hard and wonderful work of the Division of Risk and Benefits. Again, it's Director Joyce Pittman, it's her staff. We have Deputy Director Margaret Blacker. This is a lot of work for them, not just in the procurement arena, by the way, but changing carriers, especially with retirees, is a big deal. There's a lot of implementation that goes along with it. There's a lot of support that we need to provide to our retirees so that they are comfortable with the changes that they're experiencing. And one thing I think we've been doing quite well in risk and benefits with respect to our retirees is to educate them, probably going back to 2015 at this point, that we all need to expect change, and procurement is going to be one of those arenas where we have the ability to save money, and that's by going out to bid for our medical carrier, for our prescription drug benefits carrier, and they should expect change if that's one way that we can help contain costs. So again, wonderful results, wonderful work by our Division of Risk and Benefits.
I want to add to that we as a department, we play small ball. We hit a lot of singles every day. That's what we do. Our job, wake up, try and put the ball in play and hit a single. This is a home run. And we're not in the home run business, but we hit a hell of a good grand slam here.
I would agree
And
with
I'm
you.
taking credit for it, and I'm not letting it go. And I want everyone to not throw this slide away. You can dump everything else in the trash, but for God's sakes, please keep this one, because this result is ridiculous. It's insane, and it's not going to happen again. But that's a home run.
That is
and
a
I
home
just
run,
wanna
and
say that.
especially since I know it wasn't because retirees died from COVID.
Yes, and I think we think we weren't hit that hard.
Yeah.
We think our people did pretty well.
Yeah, I gathered that when Cassie sent me some stats on something else. Representative Emmerich, please.
Thank you. I would like to take a moment of personal privilege as a participant of the program. As a state rep, we can go on as a paid participant, we can go on the retiree program or the regular program, I'm assuming. My monthly cost went from over $600 to about $450. So it's a home run for us too.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Very happy to hear.
So Cassie, we're sorry you didn't get any credit, that the commissioner took all of it, but good job.
Oh.
Well, that's the way it goes.
That's the way it goes.
Hey, thank you. Now I'm in trouble.
Okay, Commissioner, I've got my index here of HB2, which LBA, bless her heart, somehow managed to get this out almost as soon as we got HB2. I do not know how they do all the great work they do. We have not talked about a couple of these instances, so I'm going to start with section 5 and see what page that's on. Section 5 starts on page 2. So can you run us through these,
So-
because we need to
Sure.
discuss these
So
as
section
well.
5 is about Bureau Planning and Management. One of the things we're doing as an agency in the plant and property side is trying to The old construct is that there are a bunch of silos, court facilities as a silo,
Yep.
general services as a silo, and facilities and asset management as a silo in different buildings. So, for example, if you think of the state hospital campus, there are 4 different building management teams for that campus, right? HHS patient occupied buildings are one group. They do. The old HHS buildings we administer under BFAM. There are other buildings administered under general services, and then employment security does its own building. It's ridiculous for a guy mowing the lawn to stop. This is a dumb example, but it makes the point. Like you don't stop and go, oh, wait, I'm in enemy territory now. I need to not, I'm okay mowing Spalding, but I'm not going anywhere near Dolph, and I'm going to go up to the line. So we're doing that. Planning and management is a bureau of one person. And just as a general principle, I think the duties of our department should be enumerated in state law, either at the division level or the department level. And that's all that is. And it just allows for the sort of ease of operation of the
Yep.
agency.
Section 6, we kind of talked about that a little bit, but this is the payment and procurement card fund.
And that's just P card rebates will be part of revenues, and P cards will be on budget instead of off budget, and supporting just part of purchasing.
So that brings us to section 8, which starts at the bottom of page 4, if you're tracking that remotely.
The consolidation of HR function. This is something that has been in the budget for, geez, it might even be a decade at this point.
Oh, do we need this?
Well, what it does is it's part of a mandate for us to do things, and it allows us the statutory authority to do certain things. When this was first put in the budget, there was a notion that things are either A, centralized, or B, decentralized. No such thing as C. Frankly, in looking at particularly the personnel system and the HR functions of the state, we've decided that C is the right answer, not A or B. For example, the Department of Safety has more than 1,000 employees and an HR function and a staff, and does it very well. How they operate and how their employees are served by the HR function is very different from, say, the Department of Labor. Fewer than 90 employees. They have one person who does HR and payroll and some other stuff. And you can't be an army of one and know everything about FMLA, fully understand the FLSA, the federal law, and be adept at every piece of the operation. So one of the things we're looking at is amalgamating functions, and we call it an HRSU, Human Resources Support or Service Unit. I forget which is the S. But the idea of saying we're going to merge these people, and they're going to work. We have a couple of MOUs right now where, for example, Labor's HR person sits in the Division of Personnel and is trained on some things. Well, you'll have 3 people that work for 3 agencies, but each of them can become more adept at some things. If you're a unit of 1 at an agency and you do a significant FMLA claim one time and then don't face it again for 9 months, your skill level is just naturally not going to be as good. So that language is there to allow us the ability to just function that way,
Okay.
and without need.
All right. Section 9 is also yours. And that starts on page 6.
Oh, section 9 is the language of, this is language that's in every year that allows the state employee health plan to be extended to unrepresented, confidential, et cetera, employees. It's pro forma, not pro forma. It's necessary language for the operation of the plan. And we do it every year.
Absolutely. Representative Leishman, you have a question.
Certainly the language is familiar to us that serve on fiscal, but I had a question. It says may, does that say shall now? Or
What page and what line are you looking at?
I'm sorry, page 6, still 9, line 18 and 19, where the fiscal committee of the general court may approve changes. don't we say shall? Because we always approve those. We have in the past on fiscal. I just.
We have approved, but I believe that is existing language, not, so I think,
It is existing language, and I think the difference between may and shall here, and I understand what Representative Leishman is getting at. I think that it's meant to ensure, and Cassie's going to correct me on this because she's a lawyer. It's meant to ensure that the fiscal committee can do what it wants. Fiscal committee doesn't have to approve changes. They can reject them. Is that right, Cassie? Is that the difference between may and shall? You're on mute.
You are correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
do you have follow-up or is that?
I'm still, I'd like to just check with the LBA again on that. I just.
Sure.
We may approve or we shall approve. It doesn't, I'm still, I think it should say shall. Because any of changes should require the approval of the fiscal committee.
It certainly would be our expectation anyway. So check with them, and I'm sure we'll be okay with that.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, so section 10 is really kind of a DOIT thing, but it applies to all agencies because it says that you may provide documents by electronic mailing in lieu of mail. You're not opposed to that, are you?
No, I think we actually recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. Section 12 talks about a repeal. Will you talk to us about that?
Oh, that's part of the plant and property change. In 2005, a big chunk of buildings on the hospital campus were transferred. HHS used to have its own property function,
Okay,
and so if we're merging merging functions, they're the only agency that has a separate MOU. So this way, everyone's the same.
everyone's the same. Okay, so I think your last section in HB2, unless I'm wrong, is section 11, which is found at the bottom of page 6.
Section 11,
She went back to.
And this was the suspension
and she's not.
that we put in for you because we did not staff you.
Yes.
Because the goal is, if we can't staff you, we don't want you getting a ding in a performance audit because the legislature failed to give you what you need.
These are the ones that had been worked out before. And,
Yes.
Obviously as an entity, we do, we do everything we can, and we do parts of everything we can, but there's some pieces of this that are just necessary for us to not do, or we would require significant staff increases.
So I assume we want to keep that because that's why we put it in there, and you're already short staffed in other areas. So I don't see us going in now and adding something that wasn't
Yeah.
staffed before.
And they're the same things as past years. It's not a different set of items.
Do you have any other sections in HB2 other than the ones I have found in
Section 14 and 15,
section
starting on
14 and 15? Okay, we will.
14 starts at the bottom of page 7. And they're the same thing. It's related to the medical subsidy. There's actually a House bill that is working on this as well. But this is the retiree health plan is funded by something called the medical subsidy, which was passed as part of the 2005 budget. This is unrelated, completely unrelated to the thing called medical subsidy that some local employees have in the retirement system. Ours is different. It's not a subsidy to an individual. It's a subsidy to the state plan. It was put in the budget in 05. I think it was 05, might have been 03. I just remember Jack Barnes was Senate Finance Chair. And they had a huge difficulty agreeing on the budget that year. Senate rejected the House version and started over, which wouldn't happen this year.
Could.
No, I'm
You
sure
never know.
it'll be fine. Everything will be great. They'll take what you do and say, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I doubt it.
I
doubt it.
It's my hunch. Anyway, so the medical subsidy is supposed to pay for employee costs. There was later a premium was established, and the premium is in addition to and notwithstanding other payments.
Mhm.
So we thought at Admin Services that the language in addition to and notwithstanding was clear because it and it seems clear, in addition to and notwithstanding. The retirement system is not clear, and they think that, and they don't care which clarification, this has been their position. We don't care if it's what you think should happen or not what you think should happen. We think it should be clarified. We had the Attorney General's office do an analysis on this, and this changes the law in all the places that it occurs. So there's not any future, and it leaves the addition to and notwithstanding language in, so the people understand that the premium is in addition to and notwithstanding other payments, and the medical subsidy that we fund, we send money to HHS or to the retirement system, and they send it back, is to fund the retiree health plan. And that's what it's for.
And so 14 does group 2, 15 does the same thing for group 1. Is that correct?
I believe that's right. It's the law. I mean, frankly, these sections of the law are a little bit, if you were going to do a rewrite of statute,
I'm not.
yes, and nobody is, and that's why they're like this, because they date to a period when the retirement system did things that they don't do now, and when we didn't self-fund our policy, but the language is about the medical subsidy, and it's important. If it doesn't go through, there are about 600 and some retirees right now that we are having to bill for their premium because the retirement system is unsure whether they can bill, unsure whether they can collect. So they're not. They used to, and now they're not.
And this clarifies that.
And this clarifies that 100%. And it makes sure that the medical subsidy goes to support the plan. If it doesn't, we would need additional general funds.
Okay. I think the commissioner has given us a good run through. From an HB2 perspective, DAS has sections 1 through 9 inclusive, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Representative Taberge wants to look at section 1 with a possible amendment. Representative Leishman is going to be checking with LBA on section 9. Could I have a motion from a committee member to approve sections 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15?
Madam Chair, if I may, I have my hand up. I'm not sure you can see
Just a
that.
moment.
Sorry.
Representative Leishman moved, I'm sorry, Representative Emmerich moved, Representative Leishman seconded. Questions on the motion? Representative Hatch.
Not so much on the motion, but it's on the section 1. So are we going to go back to that?
Section 1, we are not moving on that at the
I know.
moment. I excluded that because there was a question by Representative Taberge, and you may be in the same situation. So we are not moving on that one. We are also not moving section 9 where Representative Leishman has a question. We're removing we're moving the ones that we don't have a question on.
I'm sorry, just Madam Chair, I have a request of the commissioner prior to him leaving. That's all. So I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so
I'm sorry.
we'll come
No, no.
back to you after we
you.
handle this motion. This is just one thing. Commissioner's not leaving immediately.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Cassie, is your hand up for a reason?
It is, and it's just to make sure that the commissioner covers slide 17 with you before we close.
I will.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion made by Representative Emmerich, seconded by Representative Leishman to approve House Bill 2 sections 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Seeing no additional discussion, would the clerk please call the roll on the motion? If you are in favor, please say yay when your name is called. If you're opposed, please say nay.
Chairman Over,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Emmett? Yes. The clerk votes yes. Representative Griffin? Yes. Representative Leishman? Yes. Representative Hatch?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
can I hear Representative DeBurge?
is your microphone on, Bob?
No, it's not. I apologize.
We have a little technical difficulty here. It's what we would call PEBCAC. Do you know what PEBCAC is, Bill?
No idea.
PEBCAC is an acronym that stands for, it's a techie thing. Problem exists between chair and keyboard. I think we fixed the problem.
And to
Got
add to
it. Thank
that,
you,
I'm-
Madam
I'm-
Chair.
and to
Well,
add
you
to-
want to start with the roll call again, Representative
Yes.
DeBurge?
And to add to the chair's remarks, I am French, so I have an excuse. Okay, all right. For the roll call, Chairman Over,
Yes,
Vice Chairman Emmerich. Yes. The clerk votes yes. Representative Griffin. Yes. Representative Lishman. Yes. Representative Hatch,
Yes.
Representative Walsh.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous, Madam Chairman.
okay, the
Motion
motion
passes.
passes 7-0. Charlie, we have a couple more things still going.
Sure.
Number one, Cassie wants you to talk to us about another section, and then clearly Representative Hatch has a question and others may too before you go.
Okay, do you want to start with Representative Hatch?
No, we want to start with your
Okay, thank you.
section HB2 and then we'll move on.
And I'm going to pretend that I wasn't going to forget that.
Okay, that's a good plan.
Section, we have a technical correction of the budget, which is on page 17, and then details on page,
There's a summary on 16. There's a summary of the technical correction on 16 and then the details on 17.
oh, thank you. I have that reversed.
Okay, Sarah says,
Sarah said there's a summary on 16 and detail on 17.
she did indeed.
So when we budgeted, I told you that plant and property is budgeted in the agents.
Section 16 is judicial appointments or
I'm sorry, it's just on our slides.
I'm sorry, slide 17 on our presentation. I'm sorry.
okay.
So on
We're
slides,
not in HB2, guys.
yeah, I'm sorry. This is.
We're
um,
into the errata on page 17 in the slides, which we hadn't gotten to anyway. So, okay, we're proceeding on. Commissioner.
So
we're
we
with you.
budgeted $600,000 wrong is the short version. The money is budgeted correct in agency budgets. And it is budgeted as general funds in ours when it should be budgeted as agency income. It's at least it's an error in the right direction. I'm hoping maybe we can use the 600,000 because you already think we have it
I believe that
to fund some of our positions, but this is,
Mrs.
these are,
Levinus is online and she's our LBA associate who works on these. Nancy, is this clear to you so we can get amendments to make this happen?
Yes, I believe so, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, Charlie. we
and if
will-
it isn't, we'll work with her on
We will make that
whatever.
happen. And
Yeah,
if she has a question, she'll reach out to you.
good. Thank you.
Representative Hatch, he's
Yes, thank
still
you.
not leaving, but you had something you want to talk about.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just going back to the reimbursement for the Sheriff's Department. If you could, Commissioner, I mean, it's a matter of, as DeBurge mentioned, it's a matter of logistics more so than a matter of population that can impact that. But what would
Sure.
be helpful if you could send me the history for at least the last biennium by county of the reimbursements. I just want to look at it. I mean, it's to see the impact. The overall expenditure is $1 million, but just to get a better sense of that, that's all.
Oh, good.
Charlotte,
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
If you get that to Janet, she'll get it out to all the division members
Okay.
because obviously there are a couple of people with questions about this, but everybody would probably like to see that.
Good. I'll try and get that to Janet this week.
That's great.
Thank
Good.
you, Commissioner.
Um,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay,
The only other thing, Madam Chair, there's an item that's not ours, but I want to call to your attention because it isn't ours
are you
in House Bill
HB2?
2.
Okay.
Sec-
Back to HB2, what section?
Section
was it?
19 on page 9.
Section 19 on page 9.
Is related to the sale of the Lakes Region facility.
Yes,
And I know somebody might ask about that or later wish they had. This is not something we work with the Lakes Region Development Commission because obviously, who else would they work with? Naturally.
Right.
And Mike Connor, who's retired from us, but working part-time, has been helping them. So that's in the law, and the sale is a process that we would do. And I would just point out to you that this is something that they're looking at selling, but this would, we're agnostic about this. It does change the way it's sold, and I think the biggest thing it does is take out historical resources and the legislature's long-range planning commission. And just so I think that it becomes an executive branch function without the legislative
Yeah, I'm
involvement.
not sure we're gonna proceed with that.
I just
I had
wanted to point
noticed
out that
Yeah,
we're agnostic.
If I could, Madam Chair, I was thinking about, colleague Peter Spanos and
no, I don't think so.
I think he's still on the commission too.
Yes, he is. We miss him, his wife, and well, both of them, but his wife really likes to be warm in the winter. And warm means a lot of time in Florida or, the Bahamas or someplace. Yeah, so we understand that. Absolutely understand that.
The
Yeah,
fi-
and
the-
are jealous. So
The finance committee is not conducive to. time in the
no, and
Bahamas.
he told me and promised her that he would not run again after he got through that session. I mean, and I understand that life is short. You need to do the good things for yourselves.
I hear that.
Now, before Commissioner Arlinghouse and his staff leave, any last questions on any topic they've covered? I really appreciate you for being so thorough with helping us go through your budget so effectively.
We're happy to talk anytime.
I see no questions.
I have a-
Oh, Representative Leishman, I spoke too soon.
I'm gonna take personal privilege like Mr. Tracy did here earlier, but I just want to say thank you. I was here when we had past commissioners. I go way back to Commissioner Hill, I believe his name was. And I shouldn't say this, but I could never get a straight answer out of Commissioner
Oh, I
Hill.
remember him.
I shouldn't say that, but it's true. But I think, Charlie, you're such a credit to this agency, how you've turned it around. And, people often say they can't sleep at night because of a certain thing. I think I could probably say sleep better at night knowing you're the commissioner of the DAS. So thank you.
Oh, what a remarkably nice thing to say. But I don't really do anything.
You're too modest.
I have seriously, I have an incredible staff and, between Sarah, Joe, Cassie, and, we have some of the best division directors. I said to someone, all the smartest people in state government work for me. And
Well, it
it's,
all starts at the top.
and it's, well, that's very nice of you to say, and I'm going to take that. Thank you.
We want to know if Joe's buying your lunch since he didn't have to talk at all, but we're not going to ask that while we're live. So Commissioner Sarah, thank you for being with us. Cassie and Joe, thank you for zooming in and answering questions. We are now going to be in a 5-minute recess. So I would ask everybody to mute themselves. All right, the time being 11 o'clock. We are back from our very brief recess. And I'd like to welcome Banking Commissioner Jerry Little. Welcome to Division 1. We have 2 members at home. You can see them on the monitor in front of you. And the other 5 of us are here. So we are delighted you're with us. And I think I got a handout from you this morning. I've kind of lost track.
Yes, you should have.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Ober, members of the committee. I was very excited to see that I had the option of coming to see you in person to testify. One of the wonderful things about this process is the people that we work with, and it's been a little bit of a struggle not to be able to see folks for the past
Most of the
years.
people who are testifying, if you feel comfortable, are taking off their masks. We have, as you see over here in the corner, extra filtration equipment. It is cleaning the air 5 times every hour, which is wonderful. And there's one in the back doing the same. Most of us are wearing our masks, but you're going to be talking longer and it's a lot harder to get oxygen. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleased to present the banking department's budget proposal for 2022 and 2023 biennium. The department goes through a very inclusive process to draft up its budget every 2 years. We have a very strong management team. Directors of each division come together, as do many other folks that are the subject matter experts that we deal with. And as a team, we deliver this budget to you. The bank department is structured in 2 separate divisions. There's the Banking and Trust Supervision Division, which is Accounting Unit 2046. And then there's the Consumer Credit Division, which is Accounting Unit 2043. The Banking Trust Supervision Division is probably the one that people think of the most because that group is responsible, has jurisdiction over examination and consumer safety for 16 banks, 9 credit unions, and 34 non-depository trust companies. The other half of our business, however, is the Consumer Credit Division, a separate accounting unit, Accounting Unit 2043, and they oversee literally thousands of licensees that provide products and services to consumers in the state of New Hampshire. So think mortgage bankers, auto lenders, small loan companies, money service businesses, money transmitters. We do all of that with 54 positions, not all of them filled, however. We have 5 that are funded but vacant. We have 6 positions that are currently funded but don't have anybody in them right now. And we may have plans, we do have plans to possibly use some of those positions within this upcoming biennium that we're talking about.
Your handout says they're unfunded.
Yes, 5 unfunded, 6 unfunded. Yes, 5 funded. I'm sorry. The
Okay.
5 funded positions, we may be seeking to use some of those in the coming biennium. We are not seeking any new positions. Haven't for the past 2 years. We won't in the 22-23 biennium either. The next bullet you see does mention that we may consolidate or reclassify some of the positions that we currently have funding for that are open. We may actually do some reclassifying and reorganization of positions that are funded, primarily due to the fact that the non-depository trust company charter in the state of New Hampshire is really taking off. We're receiving numerous applications every year for new trust company charters. It's unusual. And we may need to redirect some of our staff to focus on some of those. The proposals that we're receiving these days are quite unique and propose extremely large financial institutions as a result. The bank department does not use any general funds. We don't use any federal funds. 100% of our revenue is other sources, agency income. In other words, we're entirely funded by the fees and fines that were collected during the year. And if there is a shortfall, we have the ability within state statute to issue an assessment against all of the entities that we have jurisdiction over and to collect that shortfall from them. So we always balance out at the end of the year. The budget proposal that we submitted was slightly larger than that which was suggested by the governor. We met with then Budget Director Max Zellum and discussed why there was a difference between what we thought we needed and what they needed, and concurred on the figures that the governor has proposed for the bank department. So we are very comfortable with the idea that we can run the department in 2022 and 2023 with the figure of $6,646,153 that the governor has proposed for operating both of those accounting units, 2046 and 2043. The governor's proposal is about $222,000 less for 22 than we are authorized to spend this year in 2021. The 2023 proposal is about 95,000, hardly a material difference in the world of state government from what we are currently spending, or authorized to spend in 2021. With that said, that's the sort of the nuts and bolts of our budget. It's pretty simple. We're a small organization. We're self-funded, and we have tried over the past several years to become as lean as we possibly can be. There were questions that were posed to agencies from Chairwoman Ober regarding addition of staff, as I've mentioned, for answers to questions 1 and 2. We do not plan any new full-time staff. We do not plan to bring on any new part-time staff. Nor have we needed to eliminate any positions within our budget to meet the governor's recommendation. As I mentioned, we have 5 funded but not filled positions, and we believe that to address the challenges the department is facing, we will be able to use those currently funded positions through reclassification and reorganization to meet all challenges ahead of the department. You see some detail there in answer to question number 4 as a little bit of specifics about how we might do that. One of the positions we are talking about needing to fill, currently funded and would be funded in the 22-23 proposal, is a paralegal position in our legal division. And we may need to activate that position to keep up with the legal work that's coming our way as a result of the increase in non-depository trust company charters. Question number 6 will probably want some discussion. The question asked whether or not there was anything within state law that we're required to do that we may not want to be doing anymore. And it also relates to the answer at question number 8, which is on the last page. The New Hampshire Banking Department has been required since the late 80s, early 90s to manage the Public Deposit Investment Pool, also known as the PDIP. The PDIP is a service provided to municipalities, school districts, other governmental units for holding their cash. The idea is that we would aggregate it. We will aggregate it. We do aggregate it in a pool. We do contract with an administrator. PFM is the name of the company that we've been using. And they invest the cash in an effort to try to generate a return on those available liquid funds for cities and towns, counties, school districts, et cetera, all across the state of New Hampshire. The Public Deposit Investment Pool manages a pool until recently where it dipped down a little bit, but generally it's about $250 million on any given day, $250 million. That is collected from municipalities, school districts, et cetera, governmental units across the state of New Hampshire, and sent out for investment. The Public Deposit Investment Pool has attempted to try to find ways to deposit the funds, I should say, rather than deposit the funds with community banks and credit unions in the state of New Hampshire to, 1, support those industries, and 2, to put the money that is collected generally through taxation in the state of New Hampshire back to work in the state of New Hampshire. They've not been able to do that. They can attract a better rate for those funds by taking them nationwide or in fact internationally and putting them with other entities. So that $250 million on any given day is leaving the state of New Hampshire and going to places where it can get a better rate of return, because ultimately that is the fiduciary responsibility of the public deposit investment pool, is to maximize the return for the taxpayers from the cities and towns and school districts, et cetera, who have put the money with them. Most states do run public deposit investment pools. New Hampshire is the only state in the entire country that puts its public deposit investment pool in its banking department. That creates a conflict of interest for the managers of the banking department, because on most days of the year, we're wearing a hat that tells us that we have a responsibility to make sure that the banks and the credit unions and the other entities that we regulate are safe, strong, operating very effectively. And on the days that I become responsible for the public deposit investment pool, I take off that hat and I try to see how fiercely can I compete with those banks that I regulate. How much money can I take out of their liquid funds that are being lent back into the communities to send someplace else to gain a better return for the cities and towns and school districts of the state of New Hampshire. And I've struggled with that conflict between my responsibility as bank commissioner to consumers and the chartered entities that we represent, and my responsibility to the public deposit investment pool and the municipalities and counties and school districts that use that. We've talked about this for a couple of years now with the public deposit investment pool. It's been a constant issue on our quarterly meeting agendas. I have met with a number of entities to see if we couldn't stimulate interest in pursuing a form that is used in most of the other states, every other state other than New Hampshire, which would be to have a separate entity take responsibility for the public deposit investment pool from the banking department. And I've not been able to generate, there's been plenty of conversation, but I've not been able to generate interest in anybody to take that over. Most recently, what I recommended to the public deposit investment pool is that the banking department be allowed at least to recover expenses that it incurs on behalf of the public deposit investment pool. As I mentioned at the outset, when I discussed the source of funds and the fact that the banking department is self-funding and that we balance our budget every year, we're funded by the banks and the trust companies and the credit unions. And we send all of them a bill at the end of the year that says, this is the shortfall, here is your pro rata share of it, please send us a check. So what we have is a situation where I'm doing my best to hold down the assessment that we're charging to the entities that we have jurisdiction over, so that we're not impacting them dramatically fiscally through the operation of the department. And on the other hand, that assessment includes the time spent by banking department lawyers and other staff to work on the public deposit investment pool, which then competes with them. So we're asking those entities to pay the freight for the entity that I'm operating, the public deposit investment pool, that's competing with them to take deposits out of those entities and send them someplace else around the world to be invested rather than being invested here in New Hampshire. It's been operating this way for a long time. I understand that. And I think we've been very careful and patient and listening, and a lot of conversation going on before we proposed anything. We have a concept that we are prepared to pursue. My sense is that it is public policy, and it probably is a little bit much to put into House Bill 2. And that would be to suggest a change in the statute in RSA 383 that would remove the public deposit investment pool from the banking department and have a separate commission created for it to operate the public deposit investment pool. Those sorts of commissions exist today. It would not be unique to the public deposit investment pool. It's a common operation in state government in New Hampshire. At this point in time, because we're talking the budget and there is a fiscal hook to it. And again, I realized that when we submitted the original budget package back many, many months ago, had this thought come up, it would have been, I believe, on Form E of the budget submission in the efficiency budget scheme. But it only came up recently within the past couple of 2-3 weeks, this idea of at least charging the pool for the expenses that we incur on its behalf. So you will see on the last page of the handout that we provided you under number 8. Suggested language that we would ask you to consider adding to House Bill 2. And it's Roman 5 at the bottom of that page, the italicized bolded language is the addition. The previous language from Romans 1 through 4 already exists. Roman 5 would allow the banking department to submit a request for reimbursement to the manager of the public deposit investment pool for reimbursement of exact costs. We would use the per diem rate that we charge other entities that we perform functions for. That's not a cheap rate. It's about $1,074, I believe, right now, per staff person per day that we work on them. So you'll see in this language that we've added that let me just find it for you so I can. Well, at the start of Roman 4, the actual costs incurred by the department. However, you can see at the 4th line from the bottom, the requirement that no entity shall be charged or pay less than 1 full day shall not apply is in this language, which means that we will track our time by the hour and only bill by the hour on this, not by the day, which we believe would be fair to the public deposit investment pool. We're not looking to make money on them. We're only looking to recover our expenses. That's my presentation, Chairman.
Are there questions of the committee? Representative Walls?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to this public deposit investment pool, this is going to show my naivete, but why would this not fall under the state treasurer? I mean, I thought she was responsible for investing the money.
The state treasurer does sit on the board of the Public Deposit Investment Pool Advisory Committee. We began this conversation back during the tenure of Treasurer Bill Dwyer, and we have continued it with current Treasurer Monica Metzapelli. And in many, many states, the public deposit investment pool does fall within the jurisdiction of the state treasurer. That is, for most people, the logical place to put it. We're not looking to make more work for anybody or to push this off onto anybody that doesn't want it. And so we're having a conversation. Treasurer Metzapelli has been involved in it, just as Treasurer Dwyer was, to find the most reasonable place to put this. I think people very easily see the conflict of interest that is created by hosting the public deposit investment pool within the banking department. We're just looking to try to have everybody on board for where this goes. I don't want to try to create any controversy or difficulty for anybody in the process of moving this on. We'll continue doing it. We're simply asking that we be able to collect our expenses at this point in time. But I think that's very intuitive of you, Representative Walls, that's where most states put it, is either within or as a responsibility of the state treasurer.
Do you have a follow-up, Representative Walls?
I do follow up, please. So the implication of your answer is that many states put it in Treasury, but apparently our treasurer doesn't want it. So there's a proposal to create this independent commission rather than put it with the treasurer because the treasurer doesn't want this. Am I hearing this correctly?
Well, I wouldn't speak for Treasurer Metzapelli or Treasurer Dwyer.
She'll be next. You could ask her then.
Before her. But I think that many other states some states don't put it with their treasurers. Some have created a separate nonprofit organization or this type of a commission where the treasurer and a representative of the bank department will sit on the board so that there is still some involvement of those entities, but it's not under their responsibility. So, but I don't want to speak for Treasurer Metzapelli. I think everybody's extremely busy these days and nobody's looking forward to more work is probably the answer.
Representative Emmerich, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding that when you get to the end of the year and you're trying to even up and you send out the bills, they don't get billed.
they don't pay anything at all. It's not even from the beginning of the year. So they're not included in the assessment at the end of the year. We perform functions and have for many years performed functions for the public deposit investment pool around the calendar year long, but never collect a penny for that work, which means that all of the entities that we do charge for ultimately end up subsidizing the operation of the public deposit investment
But it
pool.
would seem as a follow-up,
Follow-up?
it would seem as a minimum, they should be receiving part of the allocation of your uncovered costs. I mean, at a minimum,
Thank you for the question. I understand. I think that there's a sensitivity to the fact that the funds that we're talking about here are taxpayer monies. And that we really would like to see the maximum return possible returned to the cities and towns and school districts that place their money with the public deposit investment pool. By example, I will tell you that PFM, the company that we contract with to do the administration of the public deposit pool, does a very good job, in my opinion, of managing the funds and being extremely responsible and responsive to the concerns of governmental units in the state of New Hampshire. They have written in the contract that they sign with us the ability for them to waive their management fees. And right now, in the last quarter, they have been waiving a percentage of their management fees that they are legally allowed to charge to the pool because they want to because interest rates are so low and it's kind of hard to generate some return, to nothing about an attractive return, that they're willing to cut their fees to keep the return to the cities and towns somewhat responsible, but also competitive. They have an interest in keeping the pool at a reasonable size. As I mentioned, it's normally about $250 million. It's drifted down a little bit lately. And so they're very responsibly saying we'd rather take a little bit of a haircut on our fees than lose participation in the pool. I am sensitive to the fact that if we're now coming along saying, and we'd like to be able to collect our exact expenses, we're not looking for anything more to make any money off the pool, just to recover our expenses. PFM is doing everything they can to maintain competitive standing of the pool. We think we should join them in that.
So, Jerry, if I can just kind of summarize where we are. You've had ongoing discussions, you continue to have ongoing discussions. You've looked at what other states do, but I believe you are correct. That kind of a policy change requires a bill to be filed. So what you are proposing is a small one-paragraph change that allows your agency to recoup its expenses, only its expenses, not make any money, and not charge the people that would be in competition. So this kind of evens the playing field for everybody. Do I have that correctly?
Perfectly stated, Madam Chair.
All right. Are there any questions on the commissioner's budget, which does start on page 325? As he said, it is lower than what they wanted. They have 5 unfunded positions. They spend 0 general fund dollars. You're all completely self-funded. So we normally wouldn't, once the governor is done with you, we're normally, if you're happy, we're happy kind of thing. But any questions on the budget? Representative Walls?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd actually like to return for one moment. I have 2 quick questions on the fund that the commissioner is just talking about. One is,
He's not talking about a fund, Representative Walls. He's talking about invoicing this group for the expenses that they pay. There is no fund involved.
well, perhaps my choice of words is not as precise as it should be. But I still have a question, and one is, the first one is, are there policies to how much risk can be made in the investments? And the second question is, have you looked at the cost of the overhead? of
Okay,
what-
one question at a time. Let's let me answer that one.
Okay,
She asked about risks.
Yes, there are policies that are presented by PFM to the commissioner and the public deposit investment pool for review and approval relative to the maximum amount of risk and the types of investments that may be used by the public deposit investment pool. There is absolutely a written policy that we observe.
Thank you.
Follow up?
The second question is a different topic, and that is the proposal you got here in Roman 5 of charging the agencies. Have you looked at the cost of the overhead of administering that versus the amount that you'll collect or the benefit of the collection? It's just cost benefit. That's all I'm asking.
Right, have we looked at, essentially, have I guesstimated what the dollar amount will be that we will bill the public deposit investment pool? Is that
No.
what you?
Have you looked at the cost? If you're going to start billing them, it's going to cost you money to bill them. You're going to have somebody take time to do that. And the cost of having one person or multiple people put together those bills to each agency, have you looked at what that's going to cost you?
Yes, it will be negligible. We currently do track our staff time so that we can create the bills that we send out for examination. So the majority of our staff is already billing their time. It's all part of, and it's been synchronized into the state's timekeeping system for paying our staff for creating paychecks. So it's a system that we have in place already. We won't have to create a new one. There are a few people that don't currently monitor their their activity generally by the hour, myself and the deputy commissioner included. We are two of the unclassified positions within the department, and so we are paid a salary. But I can tell you that in the past year, due to some unique efforts that we've been involved in, for me, it was operating the Gopher office for 5 months. And for many of my staff, it is now volunteering at the COVID call center. We now all have the ability to track our time by the hour so that we can properly allot it to the buckets they will be paid out of. So I appreciate the question. Thank you. The effort will be minimal for us to be able to track our time and bill.
Thank you so much.
Seeing no additional questions, what do you guys think about approving his budget? Representative Emmerich moves to approve the banking budget as presented. Representative Griffin seconds the motion. When the clerk is ready, he will call the roll on the motion to approve the banking budget. If you're in favor, please say aye. If you're opposed, please say nay.
Chairman Ober,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Emmerich. The clerk votes aye. Representative Griffin? Aye. Representative Leishman? Yes. Representative Hatch?
Aye.
Representative Waltz?
Yes.
Unanimous, Madam Chair.
Jerry, thank you. You have made a great presentation. This proposal that you're asking for requires an amendment. I will ask LBA to present the amendment, which is something the division will take up then when the paperwork is complete. But we appreciate you coming. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
Great to
and
see you.
Thank you for the invitation to come in person, because it's so nice to be able to be back in the LOB and to see you all face to
Yeah.
face.
Yes, thank you.
It's been very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
We've got 1 minute. Little, Little. Yeah, you're live. Turn it off. But you're still live. Who should he speak to? I guess that's the real question. Okay, guys, can we move on? Jerry, thank you. Appreciate you being here in person. I have moved Monica Mezzapelli. Monica, can you hear us and can you speak now that you're part of the panel? Oh, there she is. Great to see you.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We appreciate you participating this morning. Chairman Little just is still in the room, but he is done. And so we're here to talk about your budget. Going to turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you again. And thanks for the opportunity to participate remotely. I would love to be there today. Just different circumstances is keeping me home right now. So yes. So again, for the record, State Treasurer Monica Mezzapelli. And what I would like to do today is first, my objectives will be to provide an overview of our budget and the structure of the Treasury. Highlight a few of the changes that are included in House Bill 1 and House Bill 2, and hopefully leave some time for some questions. And so I was hoping to share my screen. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that, just so we can look at the spreadsheet that I provided.
Anything you provided to us has been placed on the LBA website. People can bring it up who are listening. So you don't have to worry about sharing your screen. We have technology. The people in the room do not have computers, so they got a hard copy this morning when they got here, but everybody else has an electronic copy.
Perfect, thank you. So then again, I will just I will sort of go over the narrative that I have, the outline, and also look at the numbers at the same time. So hopefully you can follow me. So first I will start with the structure of the Treasury. We have 23 positions, 12 positions are in the Division of Treasury Operations and 10 positions in the Abandoned Property Division. We have 4 vacant positions right now. Our hope that now we're able to fill positions that our hope is to try to fill those vacancies so we can operate more effectively. And I meant to mention there is one position that is part of the Governor's Scholarship Program that came to us in the last biennium. So moving on to the actual structure of our budget, our corporations are about 2% of the entire budget, which includes our Treasury operations and the Division of Abandoned Property. The rest of our budget is really just items that are pretty much out of our control, and so, but obviously I will go over that. And the largest portion of our budget it is debt service, so that represents approximately 50% of Treasury's budget. The debt service funded with general fund and projects related to USNH. That is approximately 45% of our budget. And in this biennium, we are we are estimating that we will issue approximately 60 million in bonds funded with general funds each year, and approximately 10 million for USNH projects. So one thing that is different in House Bill 2 is we created a new accounting unit was created to start accounting for debt service related to the proposed unified university system of New Hampshire. So we want to keep track of that debt service, the existing debt service and the new debt service separately. So if this new entity is created or merged, what we want to do is be able to track that debt service in one accounting unit. So that will be projects related to the community college and the university system. I don't want to cover every aspect of our debt service. We do have school building aid and existing debt service for community college. But what I would like to mention is what you're not going to see here is our projected lapses that are going to be generated as a result of a bond refunding that we did in December of last year. We were able to, we had two bond refundings, and we were able to generate present value savings of approximately 11.4 million. And so that is about 10 million over a period of 10 years. So the way this refunding was structured is that we're going to be able to utilize the savings during the first 2 years. So in fiscal year 21, we want to apply, where we're projected to apply 2.1 million in savings. And in fiscal year 22, we expect to apply 8.6 million in service and that 8.6 million in savings. Sorry about that. So that is not included in this budget. That was information that came after our numbers put together, but that, like any other lapse, will lapse at the end of the biennium. The next large piece of our budget is distributions to municipalities. We budgeted, or in our budget, two items are included: the meals and rooms distributions to municipalities, and also the revenue sharing that is included in RSA 31A. We budgeted according to the law, and during the agency budget, the governor for the first time is proposing to fund the entire calculation of the meals and rooms distribution. And in prior years, that was capped to 68.8 million. This year, we're including in both years, fiscal year 22 and 23, the maximum amount that we could pay to the municipalities related to this, the meals and rooms distribution.
What page is that on in your budget, and which AU and class line will we find it?
I don't have the budget in front of me, but if you have the spreadsheet that I provided.
We look at our budget books, Madam Treasurer.
Pardon, I don't have the budget in front of me, so I will have to find that for you.
Representative Griffin thinks it might be at the bottom of page 169 in your budget. I don't know if you have a staff member close who can help you.
Governor's authorized budget is on page 169. You're correct.
My apologies. Should I continue or?
Yes, you should continue, but I hope you'll bring your budget up so you can see it, because we are going to have questions about your budget. So we're kind of waiting to make sure you got it up.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. I will definitely pull it right now.
Nancy, is your hand up for a reason or
Yeah, no, sorry, Madam Chair.
just trying to make sure people who want to talk have a chance? Okay, so when you get your budget up, you may certainly continue.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, great. So please continue.
Thank you. Apologies about that. So House Bill 2 is again proposing the suspension of the revenue sharing, and that was budgeted at 25.2 million annually. But again, House Bill 2 is proposing to not budget that this year in the coming biennium. So now I want to move on to the unique program, and this is a program that is administered by the College Tuition Savings Plan Advisor Commission. This is a program that administers two scholarships that provides grants to New Hampshire students. House Bill 2 is proposing a change in this program, and these scholarships are funded with an administrative assessment that is charged to 529 participants. So that's what currently funds these two scholarships.
So what's the section in HB2 that applies to unique, please?
Yes, so that section in House Bill 2 starts in section 160. It goes to 160 through 168. That is changing the language related to the New Hampshire Excellence in Higher Education Trust Fund. And what House Bill 2 is proposing is to distribute this funding differently. It will send 60% of these funds to a newly created student loan relief program that will be administered by the Business Finance Authority. And the rest of the 40% remaining will fund the scholarship programs, the existing scholarship programs. The only reason, so in House Bill 2, nothing changed in the amount this is funded, and you will find that on the unique program. We budgeted 15.9 million fiscal year 22 and 15.9 million in fiscal year 23, and nothing is changing there. Everything will remain the same. The only thing that will change is the way that line item, the grants and scholarships line, will distribute the funding. So it will again, we will pay that percentage to the Business Finance Authority for the administration of the new program, and we will keep the other 40% to pay for the administration of the two scholarship programs.
Where do we find those dollars in your budget? What page number and what account number?
The account number is 1047, and you will find it on page 97 of the budget, House Bill 1. And so the reason I'm mentioning that is because you're probably not going to hear from anybody else about this. These programs are housed in the Treasury, and again, that's the reason I'm mentioning that. So I would like to move on.
Page 97 in the budget is DAS.
So I'm looking at the page of the actual budget. So if you're,
Madam Chair, it is on page 175 of the governor's budget, your budget book. Unique program. I'm sorry, we work off the
Okay,
governor's budget. book, not-
Monica, we're in the governor's budget. That's all we have. We don't have individual pages, so we have to work with these. So Nancy has said that's on page 175.
Correct,
okay,
that's
I
the
was-
unique program. And page 174 is the governor's scholarship fund under the unique program.
Madam Chair, this is Mike Hoffman. If I can interrupt for a second.
Sure.
Monica, I just emailed you a copy of the budget that the committee members are looking at, the governor's recommended budget. So it's a PDF. It should arrive in a second there.
It'll help us all be looking at apples instead of oranges and apples.
thank you. Apologies about that.
Yeah, Representative Leishman, while we're just waiting for the email to come in.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So before we get too far from House Bill 2, is there any reason the college tuition advisory name is now being changed to just simply Scholarship Commission, and the advisory has been being removed from that?
I am not familiar with the changes that were proposed in this budget. I was only informed that there was going to be this new proposal, this new program. But the language being recommended, I am not familiar with the details related to that.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, we probably aren't going to be able to approve anything until we find out who's responsible because we're not. Okay, please continue. Did you get the email?
I did.
Okay, great.
And it's page 173. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page. The unique program is on page 173, and
That's where it starts.
Very good.
Okay, please continue.
So I'll move on to the governance scholarship program. We included that in our agency budget. We included that under the prioritized needs. But in the governor's proposal, this program is being funded again at the same amount of $3 million, and this is a general funded program. The other portions of the budget are the LCHIP program, that again is also another pass-through grant, or we just housed the appropriation for this program, and the community development block grant. That's another amount that is just being housed in our budget. We simply distribute those funds.
Yes, both of them come in and talk to us, so
Okay.
you're off the hook.
The other piece I would like to mention is our unrestricted revenue related to abandoned property. We have budgeted in fiscal year 22, we have budgeted 16.8 million, and in fiscal year 23, 18.4 million. And that is really based on our 10-year projection, just because it's difficult to estimate how much we're going to actually receive, and it's cheap to the general fund. But we believe we're going to be, close to these estimates. This year, we're not budgeting for interest. We do not anticipate any interest to be recorded as revenue. We hope to generate interest to pay our banking costs, and that's due to the low interest rate environment that we're in. And I guess, the last piece that I want to mention as part of this presentation, I was asked to comment on the contingent limit increase or the additional debt guarantee that is being proposed in House Bill 2.
What section is that?
And that is in section 115 of House Bill 2. And so Husband Stu is proposing this increase of 100 million for manufacturing or industrial projects in the biotechnology sector. And it's also increasing the unified contingent limit by 35 million. And the question that was posted to me is if this will have any effect or impact on the general fund. And what I will say is this increase wouldn't impact the general fund directly. What we do with guaranteed debt, debt that the state guarantees, we include that debt and we consider that as part of our overall debt and the potential of the state assuming that liability. So we include that in our debt affordability study that we prepare every year. And for the most part, the guaranteed debt does not impact our debt to revenue ratios that we use to essentially measure our debt affordability. By increasing the limit by essentially 135 million, by itself, it wouldn't impact our credit rating or our ability to issue more bonds or debt by itself. But if the state would ever have to assume that debt because the bonds were defaulted, the loans were defaulted, then at that point, the state will have to issue that amount. And that will be probably the time when the rating agencies will pay attention to that. Even the consideration of having to assume that debt would probably trigger a credit action that could potentially impact the state negatively. But again, by itself, increasing the limit wouldn't impact the state. It's just that possibility of issuing that debt that will do something that could impact negatively the state. So with that, I think I cover everything that I wanted to cover today. I will be happy to answer any questions on anything that we like.
Do division members have any questions? Apparently not, although usually as soon as I say apparently not, somebody says, no, I've thought of one, but I don't see any questions. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it. And we are going to, it's about 7 minutes before 12. We are going to take a lunch break until 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, we're going to go over the HP2 sections related to OPLC. We heard their budget presentation in detail, and although Lindsay Courtney spoke about the sections in HP2 at that time, we only had the draft copy. So we need to review those to make sure that they're what they were. And we also have a section about workers' comp, but I don't know if it's workers' training. Labor's got something in there about training. Ken Merrifield talked about it, but again, we didn't have final copy of HB2 at that time. So between 1 and 1:30, we will talk about those sections. And otherwise, we are going to be in recess until 1 o'clock. Mike and Nancy, are you going to stop the Zoom meeting as you did last time when we took a lunch break?
Yes, we'll stop the meeting and we'll restart at 1 o'clock.
Great. See you all at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much for the hard work this morning. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you, everyone.